His question is very innocent. Some may call it a dumb question, but they say there's never a bad question. He said, how does one start a cult today? He's interested in starting a cult today. He wants to have a cult-like following. He wants people to be crazy about him. And he's wondering, if you wanted to do that, how do you do that today?
Well, the times have changed. And so if you wanted to start a cult today, you would do it online. This is the new way in which cults thrive and recruit people and raise money. So you'd have your social media accounts, X, Facebook, TikTok, you'd stream, you would have websites, you'd have a YouTube channel, you might book a retreat through Airbnb. And all of these things that I'm describing have in fact been done by cult members, cult leaders to pull in members. And so they recruit online, they get money online, PayPal, Venmo, and everything happens online. And that is the new world of cults. Almost any of the old cults that were established have now reinvented themselves or rebranded themselves online. And people who are aspiring to become cult leaders begin typically online.
So, okay, and I want to talk about that, because the question then becomes, is it easier to be a cult leader today or 50 years ago, pre-social, pre-cell phones, pre-all that stuff? But prior to that, is the word cult, where does the word cult come from? Does it come from culture? Because it's a bunch of different words that it comes from. Where does cult come from?
Well, it's I believe, from a language standpoint, it would go back to Roman times. But the word cult has a range of meaning. So, for example, you could have a cult following. You could have a podcast and have fans that are very devoted to you, and that could be called a cult following, like Taylor Swift and the Swifties. Or you could be obsessed with shopping at Trader Joe's, and that could be called a kind of cult following. But when we use the word cult, typically what we're talking about is a destructive cult. And there are three core characteristics that form the nucleus of virtually every definition of a destructive cult. And that would be, number one, that you have this dictatorial leader who becomes an object of worship. And that leader is the defining element and driving force of the group. So it could be like David Koresh, Keith Raniere, Jim Jones, Charles Manson. And whatever the leader says is right, whatever the leader says is wrong, and the leader dominates and controls everything. And then number two, that leader uses identifiable techniques of coercive persuasion and thought reform to gain undue influence over his or her followers. And then once they have that undue influence, they use it to exploit and do harm to the people that follow them. And that varies by degree from group to groups. Not all groups are mixing the Kool-Aid, as they say, to poison and kill their members through some kind of mass suicide or engage in criminal activity. Most cult leaders are really interested in cash, adulation, and maybe sexual favors. So that is what defines a destructive cult, those three core characteristics.
Cash, adulation, and sexual favors.
Yeah.
All right, Humberto, there you go, buddy. So I'm sure, so all right, so cash, adulation, and sexual favors. Okay, so the word cult comes from culture. The word by itself is not a bad word. Is the people who use their cult-like following to harm and take advantage of people, rather than those, like I would say Joe Rogan's got a cult-like following. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah.
I would say, Ronaldo has a cult-like following, right? A massive cult-like following. There are many actors and singers and comedians that have cult-like following. Podcasters have cult-like followings. But what's the switch? Like if you look at the pattern of a guy that uses their influence and their cult-like following to turn it into hurting somebody, harming somebody, what is that switch? Where are those guys willing to go to that others with high influence don't? What's the difference? What's the place they're willing to go to?
Where we're going is that basically the leader takes control of critical thinking and decision making and value judgments. And the followers become increasingly socially isolated because the leader influences them to cut off family, old friends, and to embed in this, if you will, bubble or alternate reality controlled by the leader. So as the leader takes his following further and further away from their moorings, their family, their community, and isolates them, they become very easily influenced because they have no other frame of reference. And everyone around them, by a deliberate process, is a member of this group. So if, for example, you look at someone else and say, hey, I think what the leader's saying sounds kind of crazy, the person next to you, what are you talking about? He's all powerful, he's wonderful. We should just go along with him. So there's no way to get accurate feedback as you become more and more embedded. And then once you lose your friends, your family, you're socially isolated in this group, and the leader starts telling you that the outside world is evil, everyone is really negative, they're awful, and only the people within this group are right and good, and we need to protect ourselves. We need to defend ourselves against the persecution and the onslaught from the outside world. This is when it starts getting very dark. And then the leader can say things like, let's attack the Tokyo subway system, which Shoko Asahara, the leader of Aum Shinrikyo, did, and thousands of Japanese in the 90s were hospitalized. Many died. Or you can have a situation which recently happened in Kenya, where the leader of this group called the Good News International Church, Paul Mackenzie, told his people to fast and pray because the end of the world was coming, and over 400 bodies have been recovered in Kenya. So
how did they die? How did they take their lives?
They died from starvation, and hundreds of them were children. And so not only did the adults fast and pray and starve to death, but their children did as well. And this is one of the most horrible things about destructive cults.
Can you pull up the picture of the leader? Please continue. Go for
it. This is one of the most horrible things about destructive cults is we can talk about the process of undue influence and coercive persuasion and how people are bent to the will of the leader. But, you know, their children are simply brought in by their parents who think the group is good, and the children then become captives, if you will, of the cult. And many times children are hurt terribly. I recently have been involved in helping the children of a group called Lev Tahor, which is a spin-off of ultra-Orthodox Judaism. This is a group that has members from New York, from the United States, Canada, and Israel. And after fleeing multiple investigations for child abuse, they ended up in Guatemala. And they created a compound outside of Guatemala City. Eventually, the authorities rescued over 150 children from that compound who were being horribly mistreated and sexually abused, physically abused, not receiving proper care, food, medical care. And this is what happens in destructive cults, is the children suffer because they were brought into this group or born into this group, and they have no other choice.
Yeah, but what I want to know is what is the everything you said at the beginning. You know, they tell you the world is negative, stay positive. You know, so okay, that to me could be a Tony Robbins. That could be some motivational guy. So you know, you have to protect yourself from negativity from the outside. Sometimes your own family doesn't want the best for you. You know, it's not about. You know, the family isn't just about blood. It's about who's with you today when you have big dreams and you want to do something. Okay, all of this stuff we've heard a million times from a lot of different people, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So all that's good. Some of that stuff has some truth behind it. You know, when you're going out there, people, even parents would probably teach that to their kids. But what is the point where they go to now sacrifice your life and what were the 3 words you said? Cash, adulation, and sexual favors. What is that tipping point?
That tipping point is when you become so socially isolated within the group. Unlike a motivational speaker, you go to their seminar, you leave, you rejoin the world, you take with you whatever principles they may have taught you, and to some extent, some of the themes used by cults can be seen in other areas in the world. And that's part of the facade of destructive cults, is that they are going to project a positive image. They're going to put forth a kind of mask that doesn't let you see what is behind the door, what the more dark demands might be of the group. Hi, I'm Rick Allen Ross, cult expert, intervention specialist, author of the book Cults Inside Out. You can find me on Monect.
If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.